1. The Blood Countess. Lifespan 1560 to 1614. Real name Elizabeth Báthory. Alleged victims 600 plus. For years, tales circulated in the Hungarian countryside. Young girls brought to serve a noblewoman at Csakice Castle were never seen again. After all, Countess Elizabeth Báthory was an aristocrat, and the destinies of peasant girls were rarely a cause for worry. However, when girls of the lower class who had been taken to the castle for study began to disappear, terror spread. What was going on behind the stone walls of Csakice? In 1610, Palatine Gheorghe Tirso launched an examination that yielded disturbing results. Over 300 witnesses testified to scenes of horrific cruelty, including girls being burnt, tortured, malnourished, and frozen to death. Tirso invaded the castle and allegedly discovered mangled remains and half-dead victims. In March 1610, Tirso commissioned two notaries, András Keresztúri and Moses Csiraki, to gather evidence. By October 1610, they had gathered 52 witness statements. By 1611, the total had climbed to almost 300. Elizabeth Báthory, a once respected noblewoman, was now accused of being one of history's most prolific murderers. Her four closest slaves were convicted and executed, but Báthory, as a noblewoman, was spared. Instead, she was sentenced to permanent incarceration within her own castle, bricked into a single room with just small gaps for food and oxygen. She passed away 4 years later in 1614. Stories about Báthory rapidly became part of the national mythology. Legends detailing her vampiric desires, such as the story that she bathed in virgin's blood to stay young, were based on rumors and were only documented as supposedly true over a century after she died. However, skepticism persists. Modern historians believe the prosecution was a politically motivated attack designed to steal Báthory's great riches and undermine her family's status. But not all are so fortunate to escape punishments. 2. The Black Widow. Lifespan 1832 to 1873. Real name Marianne Cotton. Alleged victims 20 plus. For years, mourning followed Marianne Cotton about like a shadow. Wherever she went, death followed. Marianne appeared to be a dedicated wife and mother, having married 4 men, had 13 children, and caring for countless stepchildren. But virtually all of them died under questionable circumstances: stomach fevers, stomach difficulties, and acute illnesses. Initially, no one noticed it. After all, living in 19th century England was harsh, and sickness was common. However, when her stepson, Charles Edward Cotton, became suspiciously ill and died just days after she attempted to transfer him to a workhouse, things began to change. Thomas Riley, a parish administrator, became suspicious, especially when Marianne made the frightening comment, "I won't be troubled long. He will be gone just like the rest of the Cottons." Not soon after, forensic reports proved arsenic poisoning. Investigators quickly discovered a terrible pattern. Her husbands, children, lovers, and even her mother had all succumbed in similar circumstances. Alarmingly, each death appeared to benefit Marianne financially, either through insurance payouts or the removal of an uncomfortable burden. By 1873, Marianne Cotton was on trial for murder. She claimed innocence, citing arsenic detected in home wallpaper, but the jury wasn't convinced. The verdict? Guilty without a doubt. On March 24, 1873, Marianne Cotton was executed by hanging in Durham jail. Even in death, fate gave her no mercy. Her neck did not snap, and she slowly choked to death on the rope. Historians now believe she may have taken up to 21 individuals, making her one of Britain's most renowned female serial murderers. But was she genuinely a crafty murderer, or was she a victim of fate, trapped in a period when women had little choices? Unlike Marianne Cotton, this next individual won't make you wonder about her crimes. 3. The Hell's Bell. Lifespan 1859 to possibly 1908. Real name Belle Gunness. Alleged victims 40 plus. In the tranquil farmlands of LaPorte, Indiana, Belle Gunness built not just a home, but a deadly trap. To the world, she was a bereaved widow, a diligent mother, and a woman looking for love. But behind all that, she was far more cruel and sinister. Men from all over responded to her newspaper ads, drawn by the promise of marriage, fortune, and friendship. But some who came to Belle's farm never left. They disappeared one by one until April 1908, when her farmhouse was destroyed by fire. In the smoking remains, investigators discovered a decapitated lady and 3 children. investigators concluded that Belle, along with her kids, had perished in the fire. However, soon, dozens of shallow graves were discovered in her land, including disfigured remains, torsos without heads, limbs severed, a flesh mashed to goo. Each suffered the same horrible conclusion, with their fortune transferred to Belle before their disappearance.
She's known as a LaPorte County serial killer. Belle Gunness is believed to have killed more than 20 people over a century ago.
Her is Belle Gunness. She allegedly lured men to her farm in LaPorte County. Some say she killed more than 20 people and buried them. In April 1908, there was a fire at Belle's home. It's where the bodies of her 3 children were discovered.
Her crimes were finally coming to light. As investigators looked for explanations, Belle's hired hand, Leigh Lamphere, revealed a surprising truth. The fire had been her escape plan. The body amidst the ruins wasn't Belle's. It was a fake body. She disappeared, leaving no loose ends and an unresolved mystery. Despite several sightings, Belle Gunness was never discovered. Did she begin a new life under a different name? Without any DNA technology, it was a lost case, and soon, the Hell's Belle became a myth. But sometimes, even myths and legends can be scarier than real life, such as the next female killer. 4. The Baby Butcher. Lifespan 1837 to 1896. Real name Amelia Dyer. Alleged victims 400 plus. In the Victorian era, unmarried mothers frequently struggled as the government removed all financial obligations from the fathers of illegitimate children. Raising children in a society where single parenthood and illegitimacy were stigmatized was extremely difficult, leading to the practice of baby farming. Individuals worked as adoption or fostering agents in exchange for ongoing payments or a one-time fee from the baby's mothers. Amelia Dyer grew up in difficult circumstances in Victorian England. She observed her mother's dramatic collapse due to typhus, which may have influenced her sense of mad nature. She was trained as a nurse, but quickly discovered a more profitable trade, taking in unwanted newborns for a good price. At first, she allowed them to pass away from neglect. She eventually speeded up the procedure by wrapping a strip of white edging tape around their necks. For decades, Dyer escaped capture by wandering from town to town under several aliases. Even a prison term and stays in psychiatric institutions couldn't put a stop to her crimes. However, in 1896, her indifference led to her ruin. When an oddly wrapped corpse was discovered in the Thames, detectives tracked it down to her. A police search on her house uncovered overwhelming evidence: letters from desperate moms, baby clothing, and the stench of death that lingered to the walls. Dyer was hanged in June after being convicted of a single murder. However, the actual extent of her crimes remained a haunting mystery. How many desperate women gave their children straight to death to escape societal stigma? Her case brought attention to child protection legislation, but the trauma she left behind still remains to this day. And yet, history holds a name even more sinister than hers. A figure so monstrous that even Amelia Dyer's crimes seem to pale in comparison. 5. The Little Old Lady Killer. Lifespan 1957 to present. Real name Juana Barraza. Alleged victims 40 plus. Between the late 1990s and the early 2000s, an increase of horrific murders shook Mexico City. At least 16 elderly ladies were slain, with locals estimating that the number might be higher. The victims, all women aged 60 or older, were usually strangled or bludgeoned to death, and their houses were plundered. The attacker would frequently pretend to be a government official to earn the victim's trust before the attack. The murderer was nicknamed La Mata Viejitas, or the Little Old Lady Killer by the media, and the case went unresolved for years. The killer's identity was unknown until January 2006, when officials captured Juana Barraza, a former professional wrestler. Barraza, who had been leading a double life, was arrested leaving the location of her latest victim. Initially, detectives were seeking a male suspect, but Barraza's likeness to composite images and the evidence recovered led to her identification as the murderer. Barraza was born in 1957 in Apazo, Yukon, Mexico, and grew up in an abusive and neglectful environment. She had a difficult life, with her mother selling her to a man for 3 bottles of beer. The officials believed that Juana Barraza was a psychopath who had no sense of remorse thanks to her early years. In one interview, Barraza shared that she saw her mother in those elderly victims and believed that ending them was a service to society. Prosecutors in Mexico City claimed fingerprint evidence linked Barraza to at least 10 of the 40 homicides. She eventually confessed to ending 4 women while denying participation in all others. On March 31st, she was convicted of 16 counts of murder and aggravated burglary, including 11 distinct cases of homicide. She was sentenced to 759 years in prison.
Former female wrestler Juana Barraza has been sentenced to 759 years in jail for killing 16 elderly women. Authorities say the woman, dubbed the Little Old Lady Killer, terrorized Mexico City's senior citizens out of anger toward her own mother.
Barraza's story serves as a grim reminder of human brutality, but this next individual took it to even greater heights. 6. The Russian torturer. Lifespan 1730 to 1801. Real name Darya Nikolaevna Saltykova. Alleged victims 138 plus. In 18th century Russia, a wave of crimes left trails of disfigured bodies. Many of these victims were women who were methodically tortured to death by their mistress, a woman with significant authority within her estate and close ties to Russia's elite. Despite early reports, the authorities ignored the rising number of deaths until the victim's family brought the issue to Empress Catherine II's attention. Darya Nikolaevna Saltykova, a Russian noblewoman known infamously as the Saltychika, was soon found to have committed these horrible atrocities. Darya was born into the wealthy Ivanov family in 1730 and married into the powerful Saltykov family, acquiring a large estate after her husband's passing. Living with her 2 sons and a large number of servants, she quickly earned a reputation for brutality, abusing her power over those below her. Investigations into the tragic loss of life at Saltykova's home showed the awful extent of her deeds, exposing her cruel personality. She was accused of assaulting and ending at least 38 servants, while others believe there were more than 100. After an extensive investigation and public trial, Saltykova was condemned to public humiliation, which included being chained in the heart of Moscow for an hour with a banner condemning her actions. She was thereafter imprisoned for life at the Ivanovsky convent, where she passed away in 1801. Many link Saltykova to the Hungarian Blood Countess Elizabeth Báthory, who reportedly committed similar crimes against servant girls in her house, Csekice Castle.